Hey everybody, good afternoon. Welcome to today's CAFETA webinar live on November 8th. For those who don't already know, CAFETA means learning in Creek. In that respect, today we'll be learning about Bridges Over Boundaries, Uniting for a Safer Community from William Latchford. My name is Brooke Warrington. I'm the Training and Development Specialist here at the Native Learning Center. We're also thrilled that you could join us here today. If you could please follow along as I read the disclaimer aloud. This webinar provides a summary of fundamental concepts, requirements, and/or procedures within the allotted 90 minutes. The material discussed does not illustrate all possible scenarios that could be applicable. Also displayed here is our copyright infringement law. This is just a friendly reminder that the webinar presentation materials are protected by copyright, trademark, trade secret, and other intellectual property laws. Before we get started, I just want to familiarize you with some of the features available and how the environment works. So if you look at the top of your screen, you'll see an icon of either a person with their hand raised or just a hand. With that icon, you could either raise your hand, you could agree, disagree, or step away. Now your screen should look similar to this graphic here. To the bottom left, you'll see a box that says Files. Here you'll find a copy of today's slides. William has given us permission to share them with you. Feel free to download a copy for yourself. Simply click the item you want to download and then click the arrow pointing downwards to save it onto your device. The second box over labeled Web Links is where you'll find our survey about today's webinar, along with the link to join our email list and any other links that can be seen throughout today's presentation. And finally, over to the right, we have the chat box available. This is how you'll communicate with the instructor and the NLC staff today. If you have any questions during the presentation, feel free to interact by using the chat box. Just type your message and hit enter or click the up arrow icon button to submit. We do encourage class participation, so feel free to write in those questions or comments, and know that tech support issues could also be submitted here. Most of them can be solved by just exiting and re-entering the meeting room. So let's all go ahead and try out the chat box together by typing in your name, where you're joining us from, and your tribal affiliation, please. All right, folks, with that, it's with great pleasure that I introduce today's webinar instructor, William Latchford. And Will, I'll hand it off to you now.
All right, thank you, Brooke. Good afternoon, everybody. Happy November to everybody. I appreciate you being on this afternoon. This is an exciting series of Unity Talks, bridging public safety and tribal community together. These training exercises go hand in hand. So this webinar that we're going to go through today, Bridges Over Boundaries, Uniting for a Safer Community, is the second of 4 series for this first quarter of the last quarter of 2023. Last week, we discussed how crucial the partnership between public safety. When I refer to public safety, I'm referring to police, law enforcement, fire rescue, and emergency management, and how important and crucial that partnership is between public safety and the housing department in order to really provide that concierge service to tribal communities. The benefits for the partnership to provide that concierge service is really imperative to everything that we do in public safety. So that partnership with housing and what the housing program does under NAHASDA is very important to the success of not just housing, but from public safety and the community as a whole. This week, we're going to build off of last week's seminar. We're going to go over some very important community relation procedures and opportunities that you can steal and take and possibly implement in your community and kind of make it your community friendly, right? So the information that I'll be providing is meant to strengthen the NAHASDA principles. It's going to provide interactive exploitation of fostering partnerships with law enforcement. We're going to focus a little bit more on law enforcement today through this process than in fire rescue and emergency management, but they all go together. My principal philosophy is that, you know, public safety, we all have to work hand in hand, and we can't be successful by ourselves. We're going to unravel collaborate on some of the models and theories and strategies that will help each community by optimizing community public safety partnership. Again, this is really important because the community is really why we're all here and why we do what we do. And through tribal housing and law enforcement working together with the community, we can provide that concierge service. A little bit about the Native Peacekeeper Consultant Group. It's a Native woman-owned public safety consultant firm. We have consultants on staff with over 100 years of experience moving into the 21st century of law enforcement in regards to public safety, fire rescue, emergency management, and law enforcement. Our main mission is to ensure to be able to support any tribal public safety programs when it comes to strengthening your ability to provide that concierge service that you deserve. Every community deserves the highest level of public safety when it comes to your programs. And so our mission is to create that foundation and add to what you've already built on. It's a program that we look at different service solutions that will build on community partnership, leadership training, assist in policy development, emergency management planning, vulnerability assessments, risk assessments. That's something that's very important right now, are risk assessments, because as you know, things that happen in the world, even around the country, indirectly they can affect tribes, gaming industries, and other industries, business industries that you have. It can affect your schools. So we want to do support reports when it comes to public safety planning and training in your schools, and we'll do management assessments of your public safety programs as well. A little bit about me. I just retired in April from the Seminole Tribe of Florida. I had the opportunity, the tribe provided a great opportunity to me about 30 years ago to welcome me into their police department. So I rose through the ranks of their police department, and I ended up retiring after 30 years as the executive director of public safety. My expertise is in community policing, leadership, traffic homicide, and threat assessments with regards to gaming facilities. Currently, I'm the president of Native Peacekeeper Consultant Group. I hold my bachelor's degree in public administration, my master's degree in criminal justice and emergency management, and a year from now I should be finished with my doctorate degree in homeland security. I'm currently the co-director for Florida State University's Native American Crime and Research Policy Institute, and that institute has been developed to assist tribes and to develop research to allow them to use that research to strengthen their governments and their public safety realms and their communities, and have it be policy driven instead of individual driven or rumor driven. It's really based on research and areas that can better your tribe, better your community, better your public safety. My background is all important, just like everybody's background, but I believe the most important background that I have is networking. Networking is something that we sometimes forget in public safety, but that's really what thrives in public safety is networking. So those relationships that I built over my 30-year career, starting in the Seminole Tribe and then across the country working with other tribes and responding to critical events and natural disasters to help other tribes, was really pinnacle in my career. It gave me an opportunity to attend the FBI National Academy, one of the prestige law enforcement trainings that you could go through, and a lot of Indian country law enforcement attend that, and that networking is priceless. So although the education is very important, I really embrace the networking of just individuals across public safety, across Indian country, and across other professions. So we appreciate you being on the webinar today. All right, so time to get to work. Let's Zoom. Again, Brooke went over the rules of the field today. Again, we appreciate you being on. If you have any questions in the chat, I try to go through and answer them as I see them. What I'd like to offer you today, and I appreciate you being on. If you were on last week and you sent me an email, I forwarded you one of our company challenge coins. If you're on today and you'd like a challenge coin from our company, just as a thank you for being on today, I'd like to send you one. So if you can put your email, or my email address is at the end. If you send me your email or your address, and I'll go ahead and get that out in the mail to you, so you can receive one of our challenge coins just as a token of appreciation from us. Again, thank you for taking the time out of your day to be with us today. I'd like to start all my trainings that I do across the country with a short video, just to kind of set the tone of what our training is about today, and just keep in mind when we look at community policing and problem-solving policing and law enforcement around the country, it isn't a one-stop shop, square peg, square hole. You have to take the foundation of what the principles of law enforcement are and make them work for your community. So this is a short video, which I think is one of the best ones in my career that I've seen, that is very simplistic, but it provides a really true outlook that we can all build off of, regardless of what community that you're in.
What is community policing? In all democratic societies, the tasks of a police service are many and complex. The police maintain law and order. They prevent and combat crime. They protect and respect fundamental rights and freedoms. And they provide assistance and services to the public. The police cannot do all of this on their own. Effective crime prevention requires a shared commitment and ownership by police and the public. That is the premise of community policing. The OSCE, along with the United Nations, defines community-oriented policing as a strategy for encouraging the public to act as partners with the police in preventing and managing crime, as well as other aspects of security and order based on the needs of the community. Community policing is not a new invention. In 1829, Sir Robert Peel, known as the father of modern policing, established the London Metropolitan Police Force based on the idea of building and strengthening a bond of trust between communities and the police. Today, in the OSCE area, community policing has emerged alongside traditional policing methods as a key strategy for enhancing the safety of our societies. How does community policing work? Let's start with an example. In this city, youth are hanging around in the park in the evenings. People in the neighborhood do not feel safe walking through the park after dark. This problem cannot be resolved through crime response alone. What could community police officers do? They might organize a meeting where residents, municipal officials, and school representatives can look for solutions together. The municipality might arrange a place where youth can meet, set up more lights, and encourage dog owners to walk their dogs in the park. School teachers might speak about the problem with their students in the classroom. Police officers might patrol the park more visibly and frequently and build a personal relationship with the young people. In partnership with others, community policing provides increased safety for all. To achieve such partnerships, the police must be integrated into the community. They must be seen and be approachable, know the neighborhood and be known, listen to people's concerns, respond to the community's needs, engage and mobilize citizens' groups, be accountable for their activities. Key strategies for translating these principles into practice include defining fixed neighborhood areas with permanently assigned police officers, introducing visible and accessible police officers and police facilities, reorienting patrol activities to emphasize non-emergency servicing, engaging communities to create partnerships, introducing a proactive problem-solving approach, involving all government agencies and services, involving all branches of the police. Community policing means building partnerships of trust between the police and the people. When all segments of society cooperate to prevent and combat crime, the result is improved safety and quality of life for all.
All right, so like I said, that video is one of the best ones that I've seen as a simplistic that kind of provides, without going too deep into all the minutiae, as I call it, is that it provides a good foundation of what community policing is. As you may have heard or recognized on there, is that policing didn't start in the United States, and the foundation of policing didn't start in the United States. It started over in Britain. And a lot of the principles today are still in place in the United States, although, again, you can't live in the past, so you always have to improve the policing processes. So as we go through this today, a lot of the principles that are taught in police academies are still in place from the Robert Peel's principles, and we'll go through some of them today. And they're not specific to every community, but they are relative to every community, and you have to take those relative items and make them work for each community. You can't look in a book and think a book has the exact answer. You have to take the book and apply it, but apply it that's going to be successful within your community. So why are we here? We're here to ascertain the principles of community engagement with it bearing on law enforcement. We want to try and develop skills for community outreach and establish enduring relationships with your community. And we want to master the art of igniting and mobilizing communities towards achieving the common goal. As you see on the screen, that is the challenge coin that I'll send you. So my email will be on again later on in the presentation, and I'll get that challenge coin out to you. All right, crime and safety is everyone's responsibility. Crime is not just the police problem. Crime is a community problem. And police officers, when they go through the police academy, individuals that go through any police academy around the country, there's no section in there, including the Indian Police Academy that's in Artesia. The specifics of what they're taught is based off of law. And based off the foundation of community policing principles. So again, we have to take what is taught in police academies, and not one police academy is the same. The topics could be relatively the same, but how it's taught and the structure of it is upon each police academy. So each community has to embrace the fact that, building off of the foundation of law enforcement, what your police officers are taught, and realizing that crime is not just their problem if they're a police officer. Crime is a community problem. The police are just one aspect that are charged with carrying out the responsibilities to hold people accountable within the community. As we look at some of the police strategies, in the 21st century here, conventional or traditional policing is more reactive. So you may see some of your law enforcement out there that are following the traditional or conventional police practices, and that's a reactive approach to maintaining law and order. And it's where the police respond to incidents as they happen. They're reactive to everything that happens, and their emphasis is on enforcing the law and deterring criminal behavior. It's all reactionary, reactive to incidents. They're driven by a mission where something happens, and then that mission is driving their actions. They utilize data to drive the direction, and they look at black and white, as I would say. So there's a couple of different areas that your communities can transition from a reactive policing to a proactive policing, and proactive policing really goes in line with community policing. And I'll give you some examples. When you look at reactive policing, Police respond to citizen calls for assistance. A proactive policing, police want to seek out crime solutions before the crime even occurs. So they're not waiting for somebody to call the police department to say something's going on. The police are out in the community asking those questions, building that relationship with the community. Another reactive policing would be the police are patrolling in a routine and unstructured manner, where they're just driving around, and there's really no organization to their patrol techniques. In a proactive policing environment, you want to take those patrols and you want to target those patrols so it's more structured towards the problems that are occurring in the community. So it's really focused on community problems to create solutions. It's not just allowing the officers to go out and drive wherever they want to drive around. It's really specific to where they're targeting those areas where there's problems. Reactive policing, where 911 calls drive the activity. Sometimes you'll have police officers that you'll see them sitting under a tree and or sitting on the side of the road, and they may be doing reports, and they're very because their office is their car. But sometimes in the traditional policing sense, being reactive, waiting for that call to happen. In a proactive policing environment, crime patterns drive the activity. So you want to take the data and the incidents that are occurring, the police reports and the events that are occurring in your community, and as the leadership of law enforcement, sit down and really map out what's happening in your community, and be proactive to address those issues instead of waiting for that 911 call or that call right into the police department. The dispatch sections dictate police activity. That was another reactive policing, where dispatch is really dictating the police activity. In a proactive policing, you want to take, again, the data from, say, your records management and really sit down and have somebody develop that research instead of waiting for somebody else to tell them what's going on. Reactive policing, an example would be the emphasis on solving crimes. That would be from a reactive standpoint. Moving into the 21st century, being a proactive policing, the emphasis should be on preventing crimes. And so you want to get in front of the issues that are happening in your community. So history in law enforcement has been more traditional and conventional policing. And as we're moving into the 21st century, you should see some of your police departments going more towards a proactive community engagement, community problem solving, instead of reactionary. They're becoming proactive. And as you can see, is this picture right here, it's just a illustration that you only see that after a reaction, right? So something has to trigger that type of response, where you see officers in their riot gear, and there's a lot of them that are around. So depending on what community that you're in, some are smaller where you don't have even that many officers in your police department, but it gives you an illustration that from a reactive to a proactive environment. I will tell you that 99.9% of police officers and leadership in law enforcement do not want to see this out there. They would rather handle the issues and solve the issues prior to it getting to this environment. Because if it gets to this environment, that means communication is broke down, and the path of finding a solution becomes a little bit more difficult. So let's talk about community policing. In order for this to be the foundation of any law enforcement or public safety entity, the community has to always come first. The community is really why we're out there. And if the organization is put first or the employees are put first, the community is the one that suffers. So the mindset has to be the community first, to make sure that we have a good, solid community policing philosophy. This picture on the right is a picture that goes across law enforcement around the country, where I'm sure you've heard the term officer friendly, and just the police officers and children. we want to make sure it starts at a young age, that community policing starts with the youth, so that way they can have a successful life, and law enforcement is always there to support them. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the father of modern policing. Robert Peel, again, he's the one who created a modern police force over in London. It was known as the Metropolitan Police Service, or the Met, in 1829. This led to the creation of what they call bobbies, and that's a picture on the right. You've probably seen them on TV. You've had the opportunity to go over to London. You see these individuals that they don't carry guns; they carry nightsticks, and they're referred to the British as British police officers. And Sir Robert Peel, and as you can see, this goes back to 1829 is when he started the first police department, when it was recognized on some of his principles that are very solid, and so when we go through these principles today, you'll see what is taught in law enforcement is really something that puts the community first. And it was established back in 1829. So it shows that although we improve, and we want to improve all the time, we need to stay relevant, and we need to make sure that we always continue to put the community first. So Robert Peel has 9 principles for modern policing. The first one, as you can see on the slide, is to prevent crime and disorder. His goal was to create an opportunity not to use military force, and to really keep things out of the legal system. His foundation was to prevent crime and disorder, and look at alternatives within a community that could keep people out of court, keep people out of jails, and really keep the military over in London from getting involved in dealing with any issues in the community. The second one was to recognize always that the power of the police to fulfill their function and duties is dependent on the public's approval of their existence and actions and behavior, and on their ability to secure and maintain public respect. That's an interesting one, because sometimes it's lost that when you look at the law enforcement, it's kind of an us against them sometimes. In some communities throughout Indian country and across the country, I've heard that they don't like their own police department, or their sheriff's office, or their tribal police department. And at the end of the day, here's a principle in 1829 that he comes up with, that the power of the police to fulfill their function and duties is depending on the public's approval. So it just shows you that partnership that is so very important between the community and the police for policing to be successful in any community, including tribal community. The third one is to recognize always to secure and maintain the respect and approval of the public, meaning also the securing of the willing cooperation of the public in the task of securing observance of laws. That's another important aspect of it, because you want to make sure when laws are created that the people have input, and before the laws are put into place, that the police and the public are on the same page, and the contribution of the public to give their feedback when it comes to law and how that process is going to be is important. So that feedback from the community, as you see, is very important. Number 4 is to recognize always the existence to which the cooperation of the public can be secured diminishes proportionally the necessity of the use of physical force and compulsion for achieving police objectives. 1829, he recognized that use of force is not the answer. Although police do have to use force, that is a very a time when you don't want to use force, when it's only in those necessary times where an individual just doesn't want to be compliant. But force is something police don't want to use, and as you see, that's one of his principles, to where physical force is not necessarily something that fits into the repertoire of at the top of the food chain for law enforcement. And through that cooperation with the community, that's how we minimize the use of force. We're having those relationships and being on the same page with the community. Because once you have those relationships, then force isn't even thought of, and it's not even a discussion. And the only time that the force is used is hopefully when the police just go to their training and they have to stay on top of their training just in case they do have to use force. Number 5 is to seek and preserve public favor, not by pandering to public opinion, but by constantly demonstrating absolute impartial service to the law and complete independence of policy, and without regard to justice or injustice of substance of individual laws. By reading, offering of individual services and friendships to all members of the public without regard to their wealth or social standing. By ready exercise of courtesy and friendly good humor, and by ready offering of individual sacrifice to perfecting and preserving life. This is an important one because I know in a lot of tribal communities, especially when it comes to the conflict of tribal law, state law, or federal law, that's still a process that's working through, and there's conflicts in the laws, and sometimes, just like the community, law enforcement is in that conflict to where the perception of the law or how the law is applied is perceived differently, or even sometimes law enforcement steps the wrong way and they either enforce the law or don't enforce the law, and they make mistakes. And one of the areas that you see here, they're taught all these 9 principles, just if I didn't say it in the beginning, are taught in police academies. So every police officer knows their job is to try and maintain that equality, where regardless of who the person is, regardless of the position they may hold, that everybody is held to that same standard, and everybody should be treated the right way. Number 6, to use physical force only when the exercise of persuasion, advice, and warning is found to be insufficient to obtain public cooperation. Again, it goes back to the force. The whole principle of this is before force is used, we want to make sure that we can bring the situation to compliance without using force, and that's through relationships. Number 7, to maintain all time the relationship with the public that gives reality to historic traditions, that the police are the public and the public are the police. Let me repeat that. Historic traditions that the police are the public and the public are the police. So although someone may wear a badge, they are the public. So they are just charged with carrying out the full-time attention of duties as the incumbent that every citizen cannot do, right? Some people just can't be police officers because of physical ailments, or they just don't want to be police officers. However, police officers are members of the public, so they're charged with carrying out that responsibility. And sometimes on both sides, the law enforcement officers and the community, sometimes that's forgotten that police officers are part of the public. And it becomes an us against them syndrome, and that's very challenging for the police and for the community, because sometimes perceptions, sometimes the lack of information that's given to the community creates that environment. But we all need to remember that the public are the police, and the police are the public. If you can remember that, and we all can stay on that, regardless of what the issue is, we can assist and making sure that we're proactive and we can take care of all the communities, make sure that we're delivering that high level of service when it comes to policing. Number 8, we want to recognize always the need for strict adherence to police executive functions, and to refrain from even seeming to usurp the powers of the judicial or avenging the individuals of the state and their authority, judging guilt, punishment, and punishing the guilty. So again, police officers are not the judge and jury. They're the only ones that carry out the laws of the way they're written, regardless if it's a tribal law or a state law or a federal law. And they shouldn't take things personal. They need to recognize that they have a function to carry out, but the individual also has rights, and that's what this number 8 is principle is outlining, is that we're not to diminish the public, and we want to recognize that they just have a job to do, and we don't have the right to be the judge and jury and take the power away from the process that's in place. And number 9, we want to recognize always that the test of police efficiency is in the absence of crime and disorder, and not the visible evidence of police action in dealing with them. And that's an important one, because it's not because the police say it's safe. You know, we want to make sure that there is no crime. We want to make sure there is no disorder, and every community is working in harmony, and where kids can go out and play, and families can go out and walk their children and their dogs, and just hang out in the neighborhood without having any issues. All right, so one of the biggest questions, again, to bring all this together under the NAHASDA principles, how do they come together? How does Robert Peel, and you know, one of the aspects of doing the research for these this training was to the nexus of NAHASDA and the principles of housing and the responsibility of tribes. How does that kind of correlate with what police officers are taught? And again, through every police academy, the Sir Robert Peel's principles of policing are taught to them within their training. So when we look at it, we look at NAHASDA and law enforcement, there is a connection or a nexus or correlation to Native American Housing Assistance and Self-Determination Act, supporting Native communities. And despite existing the different contexts, both share the themes of community involvement, prevention focus, and respect for citizens' rights. So the theme around it is to the community involvement, that partnership with the community, the prevention and the focus, and making sure citizens' rights are protected. So when we look at principle 1 of Peel's principles, the basic mission for which police exist, he focused on the prevention of basic mission of the police. NAHASDA strives to prevent poor living conditions in Indian communities by providing funds to improve housing, therefore enhancing the quality of life. Law enforcement's main mission is to improve quality of life to make sure a community is safe. And that goes hand in hand with NAHASDA principles and the foundation of a housing community. Principle number 3 is the public approval of police actions. Peel's principle suggests that the effective policing gaining public approval is mandatory. Likewise, NAHASDA requires tribal consultations for effective policymaking, emphasizing collaboration and mutual respect. Again, when you look at law enforcement, sometimes it's forgotten, and law enforcement sometimes are short on this, is that we want to make sure that for us to be effective in law enforcement, that we gain public approval, and we get the buy-in of the public on how the community is policed. Principle number 4, public cooperativeness to secure laws and them being observed. According to Peel, the public cooperation decreases the need for physical force. NAHASDA's implementation in Indian communities ensures public participation, and it emphasizes the value of cooperating and achieving self-determination, right? Self-determination provides the community to make the decision when it comes to how their community is policed. And if we can come together and law enforcement, NAHASDA, and the communities come together with that cooperation, clearly opportunities for any physical force will not be there, and the priority will be working together to secure a safe community. Principle number 7 is the police as community members. You know, that's an important one, again, because Peel held that police, much like the public they serve, are part of the community. Similar integrative strands that are seen in the NAHASDA provision as it integrates helps community members in providing housing solutions and related facilities, blurring the line between the public and program providers. So it's important that, and we'll go through on some of the slides through this presentation, is that some communities, tribal communities, you have members that are not members of your tribe and are from the outside. However, I would challenge all those law enforcement organizations that, although they may not be members of that tribe that they're part of, or live in that reservation, that they are still part of the community. They are still part of the public, because their mission tells them they're a part of the public, and they don't have a right to take themselves out of being part of the public or being part of the community. When you work for that tribe, you're part of that community, and that community becomes your public. That community becomes your priority. So although they may be outsiders, I would stress to everybody that they are part of the public. Even though they're police officers, they're part of that public that they are serving, and they need to recognize that. Principle number 9, the test of police efficiency. Peel believed that maintaining a relationship of respect and trust with the public is the real test of police efficiency. The echoing that belief, the sincere efforts found in success of NAHASDA programs of improving housing situations of Indian communities tell us about program efficiency. It's important that that relationship of trust and respect is at the forefront of law enforcement. We need to understand that the community that we serve, trust and respect is the only way, and that's the only foundation that's going to drive us to the success that we need and we require to make sure that community is safe. Peel's principles in NAHASDA handling of Indian communities both advocate for community collaboration, the respect for citizens' rights, and prevention-oriented measures. Despite their different origins and their different missions for each program, they share the underlying principles that emphasizes partnership, community trust, and they have a shared responsibility. So let's talk a little bit about community-oriented and problem-solving. Community-oriented policing and problem-solving. So the definition that's used in law enforcement for community policing is it's a philosophy that promotes and supports organizational strategies to address the causes of crime, to reduce the fear of crime and social disorder through problem-solving tactics and community partnership. Through community policing, there is a total of 8 P's, as we would say, of community policing. A philosophy of full service. We want to make sure in community policing that we have a philosophy of full service that's personalized policing. We want to make sure, and we're taught and trained to provide that personalized policing. Now, I will tell you that sometimes that's lost in law enforcement, and but it's ingrained in the police officers. They all have it, and sometimes due to circumstances, they kind of get off track, and it's very easy to bring them back on track, is to make sure that the community comes first. Again, personalized policing, where the same officer patrols the work in the same area on a permanent basis. So community policing is to get the officers to be familiarized with the place they work, in the community they work, the area they work, and that allows the community also to get to know the officers instead of seeing a new officer every day or different officers every day. So where it creates that opportunity where relationships can be built. And also it decentralizes the place, right? So we provide an opportunity for officers to where they're working, it's decentralized to where they're responsible for a certain area. And it creates that partnership within citizens to identify and solve problems. So if your community takes these 8 P's and you build off of 8 P's, and you build off of them, you can provide a good solid foundation for community policing. Again, what I discussed earlier is you want to take what we're taught in law enforcement and make it work for your community. Because what happens in one reservation is not necessarily going to happen on another reservation. And for example, through my career in the Seminole Tribe, I learned that in one reservation, being that the Seminole Tribe has 10 reservations that are out throughout the state of Florida that have either residents that live on them or their business facilities that live on them, you cannot police each reservation the same. You have to look at each individual area and see what those issues are that can bring the community and the police together to make sure there's a safe environment. So community policing allows you to take the principles of community policing, and your leadership and law enforcement should take those principles and make it work for the community that they serve. They just can't take it out of a textbook and think it's going to apply. You have to take it and make it friendly to the community that you work at, and have that input from the community to build on what those community policing techniques have to be. Tribal community policing philosophy. The community policing philosophy rests on the belief that law-abiding citizens in the community have a responsibility to participate in the police process. It also rests on the belief that the solutions to today's contemporary community problems demand freeing both the community residents and law enforcement to explore creative ways to address neighborhood concerns beyond a narrow focus on an individual crime. This statement right here in the philosophy provides to where it's not driven from leadership. It's driven from the people, the boots on the ground, that can sit at the table and discuss what the problems are and come up with solutions that can make that community safe. So it's not just one dimensional. It's designed to provide a foundation where individuals can give feedback and give their opinion. And again, some people may present opinions that are slanted, but it provides that opportunity to where people can gain knowledge from those opinions to create a solution. I'm a big person that looks in the research, as I discussed earlier in my background. So I look at some of the theories that may apply to community policing. The normative sponsorship theory really tells us that most people are goodwill people. People around your communities, your reservations, for the most part, are good people. They will cooperate with others to facilitate building consensus. You know, being able to have that opportunity to go around the country, I've learned that reservations, there's numerous and hundreds of thousands of great people out there that are willing to work together, and they just need that opportunity to help facilitate that discussion. And the more the various groups share common values and beliefs and goals, the more likely they will agree on a common goal. So if you bring everybody together under the normative sponsorship theory, it tells us that we can find consensus amongst us, as long as we can leave the egos at the door and we can sit down and have those discussions. And we don't always have to agree, but we can have those common value discussions that we can address when it comes to our community issues. And this theory to me is really the makeup of what community policing is about, because we can sit down at a table, and you should be able to sit with your community members, and law enforcement should be able to hear the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? But the community also has to be able to hear the good, bad, the ugly. And once we have it on the table, then we can address really what the root solutions are, right? So it's not one-sided. It's we have to be able to hear and listen to each other, and build on that foundation for each community we serve. Another theory I looked at was the critical social theory. This theory aims to understand society and its complexities. It promotes empowerment and seeks to provide avenues for societal emancipation. Community policing and NAHASDA can both be seen to correlate with this perspective in several ways. And we'll go through that, some of the ways. So this is a pretty detailed slide, but I'll try and keep it so we're not spending a long time on it, but you'll be able to get it if you print out the presentation. So critical social theory, I look at has the 3 E's, right? Enlightening through education. Critical social theory stresses on the importance of understanding what the society, what reservation complexities are. Your communities are complex depending on where you live and what you deal with. And enlightening through education provides the opportunity that the communities can look at the importance of what's going to resolve those issues. We want to empower the participation. We want to empower the community. We want to allow them to really look at the problems and then thrive to empower to find the solution with law enforcement and with NAHASDA. Now, one of the things that that you may run into is the fact that a lot of people sometimes, not through malicious, they just don't know the answer. They've identified the problem, and it's kind of over their capacity. So they know what the problem is, but it's frustrating because they can't find the answer. And again, it's not malicious. It's just they're at that point where they're stuck. They've hit their ceiling and they don't know which way to go. So then the emotions come out when it comes to that empowering. So I challenge all of you that when you have somebody who may be frustrated, take a step back and allow them to maybe raise their ceiling in their participation, because that's really what they need. Is they probably identified the issue. It's just the issue is frustrating because there's no solution to it. And sometimes you got to take a step back and allow them to see that themselves. Emancipation through mutual coexistence. Again, the social theory involves removing oppressive structures in society. Community policing fosters the idea through fair and equitable enforcement of the law. It's not, laws are not black and white once they leave the book. So the book is black and white, but the law sometimes is gray. And so you have to be able to use the law to work for your community and take advantage of sitting down and partnering with the community and understanding what that law is and how it can be used to improve the quality of life through housing and the safety of your community. Number 5, intersection of social theory and community policing and NAHASDA. The 3 fears of their objective: creating enlightened, empowered, and emancipation of society. They intersect where community involvement and fair practices and advocacy for marginalizing communities take center stage. The community's needs are always the priority, and we want to make sure when it comes to law enforcement that that stays at the forefront of the mission of any law enforcement organization. This is stuff that's not taught in the academy. This is taught through your communities, your law enforcement leadership, the philosophy of the organization, the overall big picture of what your community is thriving for. So this is where everybody coming together and understanding the expectations of every area is just so important under the critical social theory. Let's talk about essential elements of neighborhood-focused policing. Neighborhood-focused policing builds partnership as a force multiplier. It's so important for the police to have that relationship with the community and to have their support. So if something does go wrong, it's just not the police officer there, it's the community standing up and stepping up and supporting what's right. Not what the police officer says, but supporting what's right for what the community says. Proactive problem-solving strategic approach for reducing crime. It provides that opportunity to create a strategic plan for your community, involving the members of the tribe to develop a strategic plan for law enforcement that is going to take care of your community. Organization transformation to support new initiatives. It's so important to be open to new initiatives. Those are areas that can help build and build a foundation to secure a community that is going to be safer. And if you're closed-minded or you don't like change, that's where you're going to have a little bit of issues. Balance priorities from reactive approach to proactive approach. That's so important when it comes to moving into the 21st century. Is we want to be more proactive. We want to make sure that proactiveness is something that is helping the community, not hindering the community. And again, every tribal community is different. So the proactiveness may work in one community, but it may not work in another community. Requires law enforcement and citizens to join together to identify, effective, address community issues as equal partners. One of the areas that I would stress to you on this is, if you don't have one, start a community action committee. These committees are an opportunity for problem solving to take place with everybody at the table. They shouldn't be a gripe session. What they should be is a session to identify and bring out problems in your community with all the stakeholders at the table, and allow people the opportunity to have a voice. And law enforcement should allow that voice to come out. Law enforcement should be able to have that opportunity to provide their voice as well, because remember, the public is the police, and the police are the public. And so if you all are at the table when it comes to law enforcement in the community, those joining together at that session are going to solve problems. And so if you don't have a community action committee, I would recommend you develop one. And it's not going to happen overnight, but it provides an opportunity for a foundation that you could build off of. Essential principles of community policing problem solving evaluates the roles and relationship between tribal government and the community. It requires a mentality of ownership, decision-making, and accountability by tribal government and the community. I will tell you that through my career, the ownership of tribal members within their community is phenomenal. And there's a lot of areas outside of reservations in municipalities and counties that I believe can learn from that ownership that tribal members have for their communities that they live in. And for me, working in Indian country was very rewarding that ownership was there, because I could see the difference in some communities off the reservation. That ownership wasn't there. It was only there when they needed it. But I will tell you, a lot of the tribal communities that I've seen across the country, that it's pretty impressive to see that mentality of ownership of the communities that you live in. Creates tribal community to have higher expectations of law enforcement. To me, expectations are everything, and if we understand everybody's expectations and each other's expectations, we can build off of that, and we can always improve our expectations, because the goal is, from a law enforcement side, is to provide that high level of concierge service, and that high level of concierge service doesn't have a ceiling. It continues to grow. Create a better understanding of trust between tribal community and law enforcement. Empowers and strengthens community commitment and effort. Requires constant flexibility. So important that flexibility is on both sides, the community and law enforcement. Allows for the environment to develop long-term programs and strategic approach to address community policing problems. Pushes everyone to know the resources available and how and when to mobilize them. This is so important, because tribes have a foundation that of resources that need to work together. And there's so many areas where there's silos when it comes to programs not working together. And one of the areas that's very important, that if you don't have one, is I would recommend a referral system, to where if you have, for instance, I just use a general recommendation would be, if law enforcement comes in contact with an individual who lives in the community that may be intoxicated. If they're intoxicated and the officer gives them a ride home, maybe there's a bigger issue. Maybe there's a domestic issue that's happening at home. They're having a hard time. Maybe they had a loved one that is having challenges in their life, and they've kind of gone down the path of alcohol or maybe substance abuse. Maybe didn't break the law. They were just out and intoxicated. The officer provides them a ride home. A referral to your behavioral health or social services, letting them know that, hey, this individual may need support. Something as simple as that is something that will allow the silos to be broken. But I think it's very important that the tribal government services are decentralized when it comes to working together. The silos have to be broken. And in law enforcement, if there's law enforcement officials on the call, you can challenge those other programs to break out of those silos. And I encourage you to challenge them, because silos only hurt tribal communities when every one of those tribal programs are there to work together. And there's absolutely no reason why they shouldn't be working together. They can respect each other's technical expertise when it comes to HIPAA laws and just different areas of confidentiality. But that is not an area that's painted with one brush. every program should work together, and through community policing, that's what it pushes. It pushes to break silos and everybody work together. Shift the focus as a community approach to a community approach, not just one entity. Again, it's just not the police problem, it's a community problem. Requires commitment to develop new skills through training, problem solving, networking, mediation, conflict resolution, and cultural competency. I have another slide in a little while here that talks about, and I'll talk a little bit about how you can allow community members to be part of your police training. And they should have an opportunity to, at minimum, observe that type of training that you do, so they understand how well prepared you are as a law enforcement organization. Because I will tell you that law enforcement are trained very well. Sometimes, just like anything, you may have a baseball player who's in the pros and they strike out. They have bad days, they have bad opportunities. That's what happens in law enforcement. That happens to every one of us. We have bad days, we make bad choices. Sometimes we make bad decisions, but that doesn't mean that we're bad baseball players, or we're bad police officers, or bad housing employees. We just had a bad opportunity or a bad event. How do we improve community relations? Community engagement, we foster regular communication with the community, engage between tribal communities and the police. It can be achieved through regular meetings. It can be achieved through community events, open forums. I would challenge all the law enforcement officials to have open forums, coffee with a cop, pizza with the police, fishing with the fire department. There's different things that you can do in your community that will allow individuals to voice their concerns. Sometimes law enforcement, all they have to do is kind of break that barrier and give people the opportunity to come forward in that non-threatening environment. And that non-threatening environment is going to build bridges, and it's going to create relationships. We don't create relationships in crisis. The goal is to create the relationship either before the crisis, or create it to identify the crisis so we can prevent that crisis from really happening. Cultural sensitive training, to me, that's very important, especially being an outsider or working in an Indian country. We have to rely on that community to provide that cultural sensitivity training. To allow the officers to understand their community that they're working in, let the police develop an opportunity to where the officers can do their in-service training and bring tribal members in to teach that in-service training. Bring them in to your museums or your cultural areas, and allow that to be part of the training that police officers go through, because the more they understand about your culture, if they're outsiders, the better they're going to be able to serve your community. You want to build trust in your community. As law enforcement leaders, you want to establish through accountability and transparency. There are some things the public just can't know when it comes to investigations. However, 99% of what happens in police departments can be known. Unfortunately, sometimes in smaller communities, you have a lot of gossip and rumors that go around. And so there's a little bit here where you don't want to create an environment to where it creates a negative transparent when it comes to sharing information. But a lot of times you can generalize, share with the community, you can share information. One of the things that I like doing is I would invite people into my staff meetings. I would invite tribal members to come sit in staff meetings. If I had an individual that was upset with the police and felt that the police weren't doing what they should be doing, I would bring individuals into our staff meeting. I'd let them sit and watch the staff meeting and listen to what was talked about, listen to the directives and the problems that the police were going through, and how we were addressing some of the community issues. Again, there's some confidential issues, internal investigations, some investigations that cannot be talked about. But for a general sense, the police can build trust by bringing community members into staff meetings and allow the community to see really what the police do, because there's stuff that's confidential, but the majority of this stuff can be talked about in a generalized sense to allow the tribe to go into the meetings. Community policing programs, Citizens Academy is a great one. Community walks, Red Ribbon. This is Red Ribbon Month. You know, you want to allow the community to take part in some of the issues that surround public safety. And one of the things that I would share with you is 9/11 is a big area when it comes to public safety. There's a lot of police and firemen lost. But one of the things that you can do is you can have a 9/11 challenge to where the firemen, they already put their gear on, and some fire departments, what they do is, I know Seminole, I use as my references, they would go down to the Hard Rock Stadium where the Miami Dolphins play. They'd wear all their fire apparatus, and they would go and run the stairs at the stadium. And that was mimicking the 9/11, what the firefighters that lost their life that day and the first responders that went in to save people, they went and they put all their gear on, the air pack, and they went and they took the opportunity to save people's lives. And so in tribute to them, they would emulate making sure that they had all that gear on and doing the service to the people who may have lost their lives. Bring the tribal members with you. Give them an extra fire gear, or you know, if you're going to do a police walk or a police run, let them run with you. Involve the community so they understand that you are part of the public as well. And I think law enforcement can always do better when it comes to involving the community, especially on the reservations. I think we have to try and break those barriers of us against them, regardless if the officers are tribal members or non-tribal members or natives or other races. It doesn't matter. We're all in it for the community, and I think law enforcement can be the driver of that. Youth programs are so important. I always took the philosophy of taking the youth and taking the elders. You know, in those youth programs and the elder programs, those are two areas to where, you know, we always hear the term and look at generational gaps. Well, if you look at youth and elders, there's a generational gap in the middle. Well, if you can do a program for the elders, you can do a program for the youth, and you get them to build that relationship in both those areas, who's in the middle? It's that generation that it's either the parents to the youth or the kids to the elders that you're dealing with. And if you're having issues with the people in the middle, or that generation gap where there may be a substance abuse problem, you can use those relationships to get to know the individual that may need help. So it's very important that police look at the opportunity to take the youth programs and the elder programs and build those relationships. Start an Explorer program with your youth. One of the things you can do is every May is Law Enforcement Memorial Month. Washington, D.C. has a ceremony that involves a lot of federal officials, tribal officials, BIAs involved. We would bring the kids and their families, not just the police explorers. We'd bring the police explorers, we'd bring their families up to Washington, D.C., and let them go through the activities of the week, honoring the fallen officers. And it enlightened not just the explorers, but the families as well. The families had the opportunity to kind of see the foundation of what law enforcement is all about, and really the camaraderie that's there, the teamwork that's there, and it provides an understanding why law enforcement sometimes does what it does. And you can build those in your community where you could do fundraisers. You know, if your tribe doesn't have the funding, you can do fundraisers that help build for the cost of that trip. You could put in for grants, the youth program that is for explorers, and use the grant funding to fund that trip part of your Explorer program. So you want to make sure that through your programs, you allow that opportunity for those relationships to grow. You want to look at citizen advisory boards. That's another example. Again, this is balanced out because you don't want to create a board that's slanted. Again, when you create an advisory board, you want to make sure it's stable to where it's got the best interest of the community involved, and it's not a griping session or a targeting session. You know, sometimes emotions get involved, and really the foundation is good. but the emotions kill it. So I always say that great idea, bad execution. Sometimes the execution is driven through emotion, and so we want to make sure that when we create the Citizens Advisory Board, that there's a solid foundation. It provides a voice for community members for their concerns. It makes recommendations, and it collaborates with police on policy development and programs. Crisis intervention training, that's another important one. The law enforcement officers go through that training. There's nothing wrong with bringing the community in to do that training as well. The more you can get your community involved when it comes to law enforcement, the better you will be, because in law enforcement, you're trained a certain way. The community is not trained that way. You need to bring the community to you. You need to provide that opportunity for them to see the training you do, and sometimes they can participate in the training. So you want to make sure that the collaboration of problem solving is there, and you can use that through some techniques that are in your training that you do every year. And so if you bring the community into the in-service training that you do, and even if it's a 4-hour training, you may have to do an 8-hour training in service, and you see that part of that training you can bring the community into, give them the opportunity to see what you do. There's a computer module that you can purchase through grants. It's called there's different models out there, but one of the ones I'm very familiar with is called the Milo interaction machine. And what this does is that basically is a 400 scenarios that police officers go through. It's virtual training. So now you see these kids using the virtual training. Law enforcement's using virtual training, and you can use these to bring your community closer to you. If you have a community meeting, bring pizza and allow the community to go through those virtual trainings and see that it's not as easy when you're just throwing rocks at the police, when you're handling a situation. Now, the police are trained in a certain way, but sometimes the community, just like when you see something on the news, it may not be the whole story, but what somebody hears, they take it as a whole story. So if you provide that opportunity for the community to understand that what the police officers do and why they do what they do, then they have a better understanding and be able to support you through that process. There's the police officers are trained that somebody with a knife that's 21 feet away from you can actually kill you before you get your gun out of your holster and you take the steps that you need to protect you or others, right? 21 feet. So the community doesn't understand that because they're not trained that way. So when you look at the police training, you want to make sure that you can educate the public, educate the tribal members based on that training, because the more they know, the better they can support you, and the better they can provide opportunities for you to police their community and be safe and make it very safe, so there are no issues, right? The goal is to identify the issues before they become issues, and through that invitation of allowing them to see the training and sometimes participate in the training is really, to me, an opportunity that sometimes in law enforcement we miss. Even driving training, some of the fun stuff that you do, which is not just fun because it's very important that you go through driver training, but allow the tribal members to do the driver training that you do, and let them experience what you go through, because putting them in that seat is a lot different than watching it from the sidelines. And so the more you can educate and provide that awareness to the community and let them participate, I think the better the community overall is. We went over training, celebrating success. I think this is so important that sometimes we miss it. And I can tell you through my career, even as a leader, sometimes I missed it, to where celebrating that success of the contributions that are made in the community. You want to reward that success. So sometimes when you have award ceremonies in your public safety programs, your law enforcement programs, bring in tribal members and highlight what they have done in the community to contribute to the success of the safety of the community. And as well as bring those officers to the community to the governmental meetings and highlight their successes. The more knowledge you have, the more power you have, right? So if you bring community members to your award ceremony, they're going to hear those stories that traditionally they probably wouldn't have heard of, based on not being around. Well, if they're in your program and they're at your award ceremony, they're going to hear some things that may build their confidence up in your police department. So it's important that it works both ways. Bring the community into the award ceremony, recognize the good work that the community does to help you be successful as a police department, and then vice versa. Take those officers out to the community governmental meetings and allow them the opportunity to be recognized as well. Here's another quick video I just want to show you.
Crime and safety. Problem-oriented policing works. How to reduce crime has been the subject of many scientific studies. What works and what doesn't? A lot has been revealed about this matter already. We should put that knowledge to better use. Too often we still find ourselves fighting symptoms, whereas addressing the root causes is what accomplishes the best results. The police cannot do that on its own. We always need help from other organizations and from citizens. This clip is about the problem-oriented approach to persistent safety concerns according to the SARA model. A strategy which has proven its effectiveness domestically and abroad numerous times. Crime intelligence and active participation by civilians and entrepreneurs are key elements. When safety concerns arise, the so-called 80-20 rule plays an important role. A small portion of causes is responsible for a large portion of consequences.
Safety concerns often concentrate at specific locations and among a small number of offenders and victims.
Through its daily presence on the street and by remaining in contact with civilians, the police remains well informed about the neighborhood's safety problems and the priorities of its residents. This is determined in the area scan,
which makes scanning the first SARA step.
When the police applies a targeted approach to hotspots or repeat offenders, sound results can be achieved very quickly. However, in the long term, this does not suffice, because, above all, the root causes need to be addressed.
That is why the second SARA step,
the analysis, digs deeply into the primary safety concern.
For example, a hotspot or a group of offenders.
Such a problem analysis focuses on the three sides of the so-called crime triangle.
The presence of motivated offenders,
vulnerable victims or an attractive target, and an environment with limited supervision. Based on this problem analysis, a plan of attack is drafted under supervision of the local triangle committee.
This response is the third SARA step.
Collaboration among all organizations and authorities, and especially civilians, is vital
in executing measures aimed at the offender, the victim, and the environment.
Active civilian participation can make or break the success of the approach. In around 70% of all cases closed, the crime had been reported by a civilian as it was happening. By using social media, neighborhood meetings, flyers, and billboards, civilians are actively included in the approach. This doesn't just lead to better material and personal protection, but to timely reporting of suspect situations as well. This dramatically increases the risk of getting caught. Residents join WhatsApp groups and neighborhood watch teams, or they volunteer as coaches or supervisors of high-risk youngsters. At the same time, environmental elements that negatively impact the chance of getting caught are addressed. For example, better supervision can be achieved by placing additional lighting, decreasing the number of escape routes, and trimming hedges and bushes. It's not just the police that keeps an eye out, but also municipality representatives, shop owners, bar owners, janitors, and bus drivers. The problem-oriented approach is successful because of its focus and coherence with regard to the measures. It is vital to evaluate regularly and to make the positive impact of the approach visible. Nothing has a more stimulating effect than success. This is where assessment comes in.
the final SARA step.
Aided by proper safety communication, improved safety can permeate to other elements. Civilians feel safer and gain confidence in law enforcement and its partners. They become more involved and more prone to report. Other forms of crime and nuisance are reduced as well, sparking an upward spiral. The challenge is to keep up the good work. If success leads to complacency, the problem often resurfaces. That's why it's important that both law enforcement and other organizations keep tending to the underlying causes of safety issues. Only a cause-oriented approach can improve neighborhood safety in a sustainable way.
All right, so the SARA model, and when you print out the program, you'll see this slide right here. I'm not going to go through it all the way, but the SARA model is a phenomenal framework that you can use to assist problem-solving strategies. So I recommend you use this the SARA model as incorporated into your community to make sure that it works for you. When we look at skills for community outreach, what I would stress to you on this is don't make it difficult. Sometimes I think we in law enforcement make things a little bit difficult. Sometimes in the community we make things a little bit difficult. Our mindset should always be why we should be doing it instead of why we can't do it. And I think that's I don't have the answer to that, but I see that a lot, is that we always tend to go towards taking the easy way out and give excuses on why we can't do something. I try to use the philosophy is let's always look at why we should be doing it instead of why we can't be doing it or why we're not doing it. Let's prove to ourselves why we should be doing it. And I think through that philosophy, we come up with the solution. So skills for community outreach, again, cultural competency is so important. We want to make sure the officers are taught with that competency. We want to make sure we're good listeners. We want to make sure we're good communicators. We want to build that relationship and invest in building those relationships with everybody, not just tribal leaders, not just other programs, but community members that live in the community. And I will stress to you, is in law enforcement, you also want to build relationships outside of the community that you serve, because sometimes jurisdiction has lines, but criminals don't. So having those relationships is very important. You want to develop partnerships with other governments, community organizations, nonprofits. Again, there's jurisdictional lines when it comes to law enforcement, but for the most part, everything else, there is no jurisdictional line. So those relationships are important to the success of every community. We want to empower the community to be active participants in the decision-making process. It's great if we sit in the ivory tower of our police departments or our public safety buildings and we say, here's all the solutions to these issues. That does nothing for a community. We have to make sure that everybody's at the table. There's time and place where law enforcement, you have to make those decisions. But for the most part, 90% of the time, if you involve the community, your community will work together with you to build the consensus and build those solutions for those issues that you have. Cultural sensitivity training is very important. Again, I can't stress enough to develop a in-house law enforcement training with your tribe, your cultural beliefs, and provide that opportunity. The only thing that I would say to that is make sure that before that training is given, that it doesn't create more questions than the training provided. So you want to make sure when those officers walk out of there that your cultural training provides them a good foundation of understanding, just so they can do their job better with the information that's provided. Community needs assessments, very important. Ask the questions. What can we do better in the community? What can law enforcement do better? Police officers go out in the community and ask community members. Sometimes it's difficult to hear the negative, right? None of us like to hear the negative, but sometimes hearing the negative, we turn that around and we make it a positive. And that's what you want to do when it comes to law enforcement is partner with the community, hear the positives, but also hear the negatives and turn the negatives into positives. You want to tailor your programs that can address specific needs within your community, and make sure that those programs are going to be beneficial to everybody in the community and not just one or two people or one or two areas. Community policing forums, again, have those forums with your community, sit down and allow them to go through the process and understand that they have a voice. Crisis response and support training is important. Again, youth engagement, visibility, data collection, public awareness, evaluation, feedback, all these areas is a relationship implementing effective community outreach initiatives that require commitment. They require commitment not just from law enforcement, not just from the community, but from everybody, every tribal program. And by deploying these strategies, you can develop the skills to enhance community policing that can better your NAHASDA response, and it creates a positive change within your community. How can housing programs help? Housing programs are very instrumental in the success of community policing. When you do designs, put police and fire and emergency management at the table. Allow them to be at the table from the onset to provide their impact when it comes to parking, roadway, road lighting, just different areas they can provide, and they can assist you when you do your community design, or at least provide you feedback. Resident participation, you want to have community watch programs. Inside your housing areas, use one of your housing as a police substation. That's very important. Put the police right in the community. Crime prevention through environmental design. Police officers are trained to look at areas that will minimize any criminal activity. You can put license plate readers, cameras, cut down trees, trim bushes, any issues that are going to allow for criminals to victimize individuals. You have that relationship with housing and the police. You can prevent crime from happening. Again, collaborative problem solving, youth engagement, working together with housing. You're very important to the success of the police, so I can't stress that enough. I have an area in here with grants. There's a lot of funding out there in Indian country that you can utilize to fund your resources, program development, technical equipment, surveillance equipment, to do training, community engagement, even just research to help drive policy. There's funding out there for that. Collaboration and partnership, and these grants allow for long-term sustainability within housing and law enforcement. So I can't stress to you enough to use those grant opportunities. How does it relate to tribal government service model? It enhances community engagement. You get the opportunity to understand community needs. You have conflict resolution opportunities to help problem solve and allow law enforcement to do their job effectively. Resource allocation, it provides that opportunity to where those resources and communities are working together. Community programs and those other governmental tribal programs are working together. It's so important the programs work together in the best interest of the community. And it's empowerment. It provides that self-governance that tribes really thrive off of. And not just tribes, every community, and a lot of communities can take example from tribal communities when it comes to self-governance. And you're creating that opportunity for preventative measures. How do they align between community policing and NAHASDA? Again, collaboration, partnership, empowerment, self-governance, provides cultural sensitivity and respect, prevention and proactive approaches, problem-oriented policing. You build capacity when it comes to that relationship. Community engagement and that ownership is so important when it comes to the success of community policing. You want to take that holistic approach, so public safety and other programs throughout the tribe are able to share the big picture, and they can create strategic plans to enhance the quality of life of every community. You want to make sure that community policing, along with your NAHASDA principles and Native American communities, can experience that comprehensive approach to public safety and housing, resulting in empowering communities, safe communities, and then improve the overall well-being of your reservations. Closing, I just want to take the opportunity to honor the veterans. This weekend is Veterans Day. I want to take a moment to express our deepest gratitude for the brave service and dedication to our nation. Please don't forget the veterans. Their valor and courage and sacrifice resonate with remarkable intensity, echoing through the generations of the heart of the tribal communities. Your heroic journeys, deeply rooted in tradition of ancestors, elevating our pride and inspire us. You have embodied the spirit of warriors defending our freedoms, not just as soldiers, but as guardians of a robust cultural heritage on each reservation. May your spirits remain strong, your hearts steady. From the deepest recesses of our collective hearts, we say thank you today and every day to all the tribal veterans on behalf of the Native Peacekeeper Consultant Group team. Here is my contact information, this is my direct line, my cell phone number. If I can ever do anything for you, please give me a call. Here's my email. Again, please provide me your address, and I'd be glad to send you. It'd be my honor to send you our challenge coin for our organization. To ensure public safety and secure, accessible housing for our all tribal communities, we must work together diligently to implement robust measures that prioritize law enforcement, emergency preparedness, and sustainable housing initiatives. So on behalf of all the members of my team of Native Peacekeeper Consultant Group, I thank you for the opportunity to present to you today, and I hope you have a great rest of the day. And again, my contact information is there. If you need anything, please feel free to reach out. That is the end of my presentation. Brooke, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
All right, thank you so much, William. I went ahead and put William's email address into the chat, you guys, if you want to take that. And I'm going to go ahead and launch today's webinar feedback survey. But thank you so much for that presentation. Well, I know I certainly learned a lot. If y'all have any further questions for Will, you can go ahead and put them into the chat as I close out the webinar. And again, we hope you can take a minute to complete our survey. It doesn't take very long, and it helps us to know what is working well, what could maybe be improved upon. And we do invite you to be as candid as you would like, because the surveys are anonymous. So it helps us to improve, it helps our instructors to improve, just good all around if you could take a moment to do that. And also feel free to access this and any other recorded webinars online on our website, nativelearningcenter.com. We have a Catheta webinars tab featuring a recorded webinars section. You can click on any one of the webinars that we've done for the past 2 years. So feel free to view those, share them with your friends and colleagues. Our next webinar coming up is actually, this one's kind of at an alternative time than normal. This is on grants, budgets that tell your story. It's coming up this next Monday. This one is at 10 a.m. So a little earlier than normal. So if that's, way early for your time zone, no worries. Remember, we do post our recordings. But Diane Leonard is fantastic. So if you're able to be up that early, we definitely invite you to join us. And then please check out our upcoming events posted to our various social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. And we even have a podcast titled Hopathanga Native American Podcast, where we discuss more focused topics within tribal housing and self-determination. You can listen to that on Simplecast, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and you can even view the video recordings with our guests on YouTube. All right, pretty people, I want to thank you all again for joining us today. Hopefully all of you have a fantastic rest of your day, and we look forward to connecting with all of you real soon. All right, folks, I'm going to go ahead and